When an unstoppable force meets an immovable object, what happens? This week in the NBA, we were lucky enough to answer that question when the Oklahoma City Thunder traveled to play the Cleveland Cavaliers on January 8th in a thrilling game that featured exciting dunks, blocks, and great passing. The common headlines about the NBA recently have been highly negative. People like to complain that the NBA is dead, that the current state of the game is unwatchable. But this game between the two current best teams in the league proved all of those narratives wrong.
Whoa! Jared Allen!
He's pretty good.
Oh, beautiful play from Wiggins. Mitchell the drive, and the flush! Comes up with the ball and throws it down.
In last year's NBA season, the Oklahoma City Thunder emerged as a serious title contender, claiming the 1 seed in the Western Conference before falling to the 5 seed Dallas Mavericks in the Western Conference semifinals. And while losing in the playoffs is never how you want your season to end, it was still an extremely promising year for the young Thunder team. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander cemented himself as a Tier 1 star in the NBA, and their core of SGA, Jalen Williams, and the rookie Chet Holmgren was clicking both offensively and defensively, with the Thunder placing in the top 5 of offensive and defensive team ratings. The only other team to do so was the eventual champion Boston Celtics. In the offseason, the Thunder traded Josh Giddey to the Bulls in exchange for Alex Caruso, a defensive specialist who also posed a threat from the three-point line. They also signed free agent center Isaiah Hartenstein to a 3-year contract as a backup option to Chet Holmgren, and as one of the oldest players on the roster, hoping to bring some of that veteran experience to the locker room, even though he's only 26 years old.
Still an NBA team over there, no matter who's in, who's out. But
continue to be so aggressive and so efficient. Tell me about, and you guys played great on this trip, and the fact of the matter is that you guys group has continued to respond night in and night out.
All right, guys, chill. I'm sorry, Nick. The children, I'm so sorry.
This OKC team is young and committed to building together. Altogether, the Oklahoma City Thunder, led by their GM Sam Presti, built on an already successful season in 2024 and were going into this current NBA season with plenty of momentum, and most pundits predicted them to finish at the top of the Western Conference standings. On the other side of the league, the Cleveland Cavaliers story is a bit different. In 2023-24, they were a strong Eastern Conference team to be sure, but this was a year that was mostly defined by Boston dominating the East, and the rest of the teams were kind of in a cluster behind them. In the regular season, the Cavs finished as the 4 seed, and they went on to beat the Orlando Magic in 7 games, to make it their first playoff series win without LeBron since they drafted him in 2003. The next round, they were quickly dispatched by the Boston Celtics, while Donovan Mitchell and Jared Allen sat on the sidelines due to injury. Actually, one of the primary takeaways from Cleveland's entire season was that they were often hampered by injuries. Every one of their starters spent some time out. Aside from the aforementioned Mitchell and Allen, Darius Garland suffered a broken jaw and Evan Mobley needed knee surgery. So there remained a lot of what-ifs about this Cavs team. If they had their whole roster healthy, what could they accomplish? The Cavs quickly answered those questions as this season began, but before we get there, let's talk about Cleveland's eventful offseason. Less than 10 days after losing the Eastern Conference semifinals, Cleveland dismissed their head coach of over 4 years. As with any coaching change, the reasons are not perfectly clear why this happened, but some reasons that were cited included was that he was too stagnant with the Cavs offense and didn't adapt to the modern basketball trends, as well as not developing some of the Cavs' high potential players enough. Either way, it was clear the Cavaliers front office wanted a change of pace, and so they brought in Kenny Atkinson, an offensively minded coach who previously was lead assistant under Steve Kerr's Golden State Warriors. So while there was some change in the coaching, there was no change in the Cavs lineup, as the main story of this offseason was the Cavaliers shoring up their core of players. They signed their star shooting guard Donovan Mitchell to a big contract extension, as well as giving their big men Jared Allen and Evan Mobley new contracts. The story was clear, and that was that Cleveland was happy with their current lineup, and they believed that if they could stay healthy and play a full season together, they could really succeed. So we begin the 2024-25 NBA season. Cleveland started off by winning their first few games, and they were playing really exciting basketball. Then they kept winning. Then they made it to 10 in a row. Then 11. Then 12. After they won 13 games in a row, they passed Michael Jordan's 96 Bulls on the list for best starts to an NBA season. Before we knew it, the Cleveland Cavaliers had won 15 games in a row, and they had a huge lead on the rest of the Eastern Conference. The streak did end to the Boston Celtics in the 16th game of the season, but still, this Cavs team was clearly clicking. Kenny Atkinson had come in with a coaching style that emphasized moving the ball around the court, involving every single player and finding every open space on the floor possible.
You guys are having big win after big win against elite team after elite team. How are you making it look so easy?
Cavs hoops. I mean, it's genuine. We're just playing Cavs basketball. It's ethical basketball.
Do people want to know what that actually means?
Farm raised, non-GMO, organic, or free range, ethical basketball.
The Cavs led the league in offense, looking a completely different team from the slower, more old-fashioned style that they were playing before this. Additionally, under this new system, Cleveland stars were able to really shine. Donovan Mitchell is still chugging along as the team's consistent offensive engine, but under this new system, Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen have really been unleashed. I don't want to forget about the other side of this story though, as the Oklahoma City Thunder are also enjoying a similarly great start to the 2024-25 season. At the time that the Cavs are 15-0, the Thunder are also leading the Western Conference with an 11-3 record, even despite Chet Holmgren suffering a pelvis injury in mid-November that would see him sidelined for at least 10 weeks. Perhaps the biggest inflection point to the Thunder season was the December 17th game against the Milwaukee Bucks. This was the finals of the NBA's in-season tournament known as the Emirates NBA Cup, which was a new format that the NBA introduced last season in order to boost the importance and excitement of regular season games. In this game, the Thunder would fall to the Bucks behind a triple-double from Giannis. And while the NBA Cup is still a new format, it definitely matters to the players. They're fierce competitors, and so they want to win any trophy that you're going to put in front of them. Perhaps this loss lit a fire under a young Thunder team that had now fallen short in big games twice in 2 years, including their playoff loss to Luka and the Mavericks last year. Whatever the reason, around this time in mid-December, OKC really started to cook and pieced together win after win all the way through December and into January. Meanwhile, in Cleveland, while they weren't still undefeated, they were still the dominant force in the Eastern Conference. It's clear that Atkinson was doing a good job because Shaq made it a point to publicly deride him, which is often a surefire way to know that the opposite is true.
I want to give Kenny Atkinson some love in Cleveland, man. He's doing a fabulous job. Those guys are playing well.
Nothing. Donovan Mitchell is playing.
You don't believe in coaching because you're a dummy.
I don't.
The defenses couldn't predict where the next attack would come from Cleveland. They were unpredictable and consistently generating open shots. As they stacked together wins, they never ceded their lead in the East, pushing their record to an incredible 31 wins and 4 losses. And in the West, OKC's record stood at 32 wins and 5 losses. This was only the second time in NBA history that 2 different teams held records better than 30-5 at the same time this deep into the season. But while Cleveland and Oklahoma City were lighting up the league, the headlines were dominated by a different and a much more negative topic. To put it simply, it's recently been popular to basically hate on the NBA. You can get a ton of likes if you go online and say that the NBA is unwatchable and ratings are falling. And yes, while social media is not really ever the place for great discourse, it's still a relevant part of culture. And I'm kind of convinced that a lot of these people that are just constantly saying how boring basketball is just don't actually watch the NBA on a regular basis. Players today are unbelievably skilled as offense continues to improve to new heights. It's fair to dislike certain refereeing decisions and giving fouls that you don't think should be fouls. That's totally fair. But it's incorrect to say that players nowadays are just not tough or don't want to win. That's first, painting with too broad of a brush. And second, it's just not really true. These are athletes who have made it their entire life to be good at a sport and to win that sport. So, of course, they care about winning. There's definitely no doubt that teams are shooting more three-pointers than ever before, and I can understand if that's not your kind of basketball. But if your argument is that players are just running around and shooting threes, and there's no defense and no mid-range game, well, just wait till you see the game we're about to cover. There are also certainly legitimate concerns about how the NBA handles the streaming of its game and the promotion of its teams. In recent years, it's become more difficult and more expensive than ever to watch professional sports, and especially professional basketball. And the NBA has been fairly criticized for leaning too heavily into marketing their only big market teams like the Lakers or the Warriors or the Boston Celtics, and ignoring teams that are in smaller markets like the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Oklahoma City Thunder. But I will give the NBA credit here. They did do a good job promoting this Cavs Thunder game. And as we've talked about, deservedly so. Going into this game, the Cavs had a 10-game win streak, winning all of those games by a handy margin of 10 or more points, and they sat atop the Eastern Conference. And the Thunder had a franchise record 15-game win streak to match Cleveland's season-starting 15-game win streak, and they sat atop the Western Conference standings. Additionally, before this game, the Cavs were undefeated in all their games against the West, and the Thunder were undefeated in all their games against the East. And the narrative don't stop there. The Cavs were the top-rated offense, and the Thunder were the NBA's top-rated defense. These are two juggernauts, two season-leading elite teams, full of young, exciting stars, and they're about to meet right in the middle of the regular season when both teams are at the top of their form. This doesn't happen that often. Typically, we have to wait until the playoffs for such exciting and high-intensity basketball, but we were lucky enough to be treated to it earlier this week. And the game did not disappoint. In the first possession of the game, the Cavs showed off their free-flowing passing, ending with an open corner three for Wade. Before their next time down the court, Garland pulled up to take a 6-point lead. Evan Mobley got a block on Wallace's attempted layup, and J-Dub responded, pulling up with a fadeaway to get the Thunder on the board. Through the rest of the first quarter, the Thunder began to get their offense rolling, finding some open passes to generate good looks, and Wiggins put in this sweet layup. For Cleveland, their two big men were the stars, with Allen rising tall to make this alley-oop dunk, and Mobley swishing this 14-footer. And as Mobley and Allen pushed in the paint, it opened up the corners for Max Strus and Dean Wade to sink threes. As the court spread out, the Cavs further took advantage, zipping the ball around. Jalen Williams for OKC notched a three-pointer, and Mobley responded, powering through to get this dunk. SGA got a classic mid-range jumper, and Ty Jerome put in this wild floater. After a Cleveland steal, Garland found Levert for a layup. Then the Thunder responded with Isaiah Joe getting a steal and feeding SGA for a dunk. With the score at 57-58, Lou Dort toughed out a rebound and fed Jalen Williams for a coast-to-coast layup. And then Mobley found Allen for a big alley-oop, which got the Cleveland crowd on their feet. And they stayed on their feet a few moments later as the 6'3" Donovan Mitchell drove through the Thunder defense for a huge dunk. That would close the half. As the teams went to the locker rooms, it was clear they were both cooking offensively and defensively. Neither team was going to take their foot off the gas for a second. And perhaps most excitingly, this was a full roster performance from both teams. This wasn't hero ball. Donovan Mitchell only had 4 points in the half, and the score was still 62-59 for Cleveland. Hartenstein opened up the second half with 2 floaters, and then SGA put in this beautiful finger roll to give the Thunder a 1-point lead. At this point, we had already had 13 league changes, and we're just starting the second half. Darius Garland drove in to get this high floating shot and one, before SGA pulled up another mid-range. Hartenstein used his size to drive into the paint and find Wallace for a great bucket, and the Cavs responded with another Mobley to Allen alley-oop. You name a way to score, and these teams were doing it. Down 3 at 84-81, OKC drove at Cleveland's basket. Wallace and Hartenstein all tried to work through tough contact from the Cavs defenders that the refs played through, and Cleveland took advantage, passing the ball down to Strus for a quick release corner 3. As the third quarter came to a close, Lou Dort somehow scored this ridiculous shot while he was falling down, and Mitchell made this great jumping pass for an open three-pointer. Early in the fourth, the teams traded threes, and J-Dub made this wildly creative move to make room for a layup, to then put the Thunder up 1. The Cavs reclaimed their lead with Strus and Mobley both putting in layups over OKC defenders, and then Ty Jerome extended the lead with 4 quick points of his own. With 4.5 minutes to go, Mitchell made this three-pointer to put Cleveland up by 7, and the stadium got loud. SGA then silenced the crowd right after with this tall floater from 10 feet. The last few minutes would be full of scrappy play, as the teams fought for rebounds, trading offensive and defensive boards. With a 3-point lead and roughly a minute to go, Evan Mobley sized up Isaiah Hartenstein, putting it up and over him to make it 127 points to 122. Next time down the court, Darius Garland scored a tough bucket that would be the final points of the game, as the time expired to give Cleveland a huge win, ending the Thunder's 15-game win streak, and sending a message to the sports world that they were serious title contenders. It wasn't an ideal game for either team, as Donovan Mitchell had a pretty weak shooting night, and OKC were playing without Chet. But really, the sport of basketball was the winner here. After weeks of complaints about lame basketball and weak star players, this game that was also broadcast on national television had everything you could want out of a game of basketball. Lockdown defense, dunks, mid-range game, three-point shooting, difficult gritty layups, tough rebounding, steals and blocks, and excitement and lead changes all the way throughout. Anyone who says that basketball is unwatchable should probably go and rewatch this game. And we get the pleasure of seeing them play again tonight. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, you can subscribe right here on YouTube for more content like it. I'll see you in the next one.